just minutes away from starting. Good afternoon, I'm Lisa Kim.
And I'm Jessica Aguirre. Thank you for joining us for our special Olympic coverage.
Let's go live again to Chopper 11 over the scene of the ferry building along the Embarcadero. Thousands of protesters out there. We've got pro-Tibetan supporters, pro-Chinese supporters, all kinds of causes, human rights violations in China, Tibetan crackdown, also Darfur, just a number of causes. These protesters out there, not only for the torch run itself.
And we're talking about a global international event occurring right here on the streets of San Francisco. The entire world is watching what happens here today to see how it will not only affect the Olympic torch run as it continues its journey, but also the image of the United States, certainly the image of San Francisco being played out today, something weighing heavily on San Francisco officials, most of that on Gavin Newsom, who wants to make sure that the image of the United States and of his city remains pristine. Heightened alert. What Mayor Newsom doesn't want is what we saw in Turkey, London, and Paris, where protesters tried to stop the runners and extinguish the flame.
And in the midst of all those protesters right now is NBC 11's Garvin Thomas. Garvin, what do you know so far down there?
Lisa, for where I'm standing right now along the Embarcadero between the Bay Bridge and AT&T Park, frankly, I don't see how this torch relay is going to go off as planned. You can just take a look right behind me, the Embarcadero filled with protesters. The protest you're looking at started at the ferry building around noon, got all the way just to about Brannan. They have stopped and have started heading back in the other direction. To be frank, though, I don't know why. It does not look like police have come out here to push them. In fact, if you look around, you don't see many police at all. Let me show you some video we shot just within the last hour of this massive protest. Started with a few hundred, quickly grew to a number of thousand. These are the anti-Chinese, mostly Tibetan protesters. They started at the ferry building around noon, marching right down the Embarcadero. At one point, not long into the walk, about a dozen motorcycled San Francisco police officers tried to stop the crowd. They lined up across the Embarcadero, ordered people to go onto the sidewalk. Frankly, the protesters just ignored them. They walked around them on either side. The police did nothing and could do nothing to stop them. Then the most heated confrontation so far, they got up to about Pier 28 when a tour bus, escorted by a couple of police vehicles, made its way from AT&T Park, took a left onto Bryant. Well, a number of the protesters rushed in front of the tour bus. They were able to stop it, and we get live pictures now. That bus is still stopped. There are a number of protesters who have laid down in front of the bus, some who are climbing on top of it, banging it. At one point, we heard what sounded like a bottle break against the tour bus. That has been stuck there, an army of protesters, or a small army of protesters, doing what they can to stop that. Again, looking back down on the crowd in the Embarcadero, they have started making their way back again toward the ferry building. A number of anti-Chinese protesters. You see the Chinese flag. There are a number of pro-Chinese supporters who are out here as well. If the torch is going to come through here within the next hour or so, they're going to have to do a lot of work to clear the situation up first. Reporting live from the Embarcadero, Garvin Thomas, NBC 11
Garvin,
News.
this is kind of unusual. You pointed this out at the beginning of your live shot. You're saying you're not seeing a lot of cops in that area. We're talking about increased security here.
Take a look behind me, Jessica. Standing here right now, I don't see a single one. Throughout this whole demonstration, we saw about a half dozen police cars, and then I said the dozen motorcycle police up and down the route, but that is it. Really, as I said, if the torch is going to come through here, I don't know how they're going to do it, because they're going to have to get these people out of the roadway, and I don't see any police anywhere up and down the route. Frankly, it looks like they've seeded this part of the route. I'm just guessing here, but I'm going to say they have no expectation of taking the torch down this way, or else they'd be doing something to get the people out of the street.
Or it may be the case, Garvin, that they start to actually clear that area once the opening ceremonies begin, because from what we understand, the way security is going to run is that when the runners are going down the Embarcadero, they are supposed to be completely guarded by several layers of police officers. Police officers running, police officers on bicycles, and then a circle around those elements of the police officers on motorcycles. So that may be their strategy for clearing that Embarcadero.
But you got to imagine it would have been a lot easier to stop the people from going in the street in the first place if you had the manpower to do that, rather than try and clear them out later. So interesting to see it. I think we still have our live picture. I just want to take a look down. There seems to be a number of Chinese flags. There's a group gathering again. Now that is the intersection of Bryant in the Embarcadero. Possibly from the camera you have a better view of what's going on right down there. But this protest all morning long has been very fluid, marching up and down the Embarcadero. A few skirmishes between the anti and pro-Chinese groups, but nothing more than a little pushing and shoving and yelling. There are many pro-Chinese supporters out here, but they're the ones, frankly, who spend most of the time on the sidewalk. It's the anti-Chinese protesters who've been in the street.
Garvin, do we know who was on that tour bus?
We don't, and I don't think the protesters knew either. You could see, though, the windows were tinted all around. You could see inside people who looked like they were in tracksuits, so I don't believe, from what I'm hearing, I don't believe it was any of the torch bearers, but they couldn't see inside. The protesters certainly had no idea who was in the bus. They just saw it was being escorted by police and decided they wanted to stop it.
Okay.
The bus hasn't moved, right, Garvin?
Excuse me, Jessica?
Yeah.